A 9-year-old girl in a wheelchair was kicked off a playground by an HOA official, simply for daring to swing. The man, armed with a clipboard and a rule book, treated her like a trespasser, not a child. But what he didn't know was that Ellie's mom wasn't just heartbroken. She was ready for war. This is the story of how one family took on a broken system, and won. You ever wanted to throw a brick through a community center window just to get someone's attention? Because that's where I was mentally. And honestly, I'm still there. My name is Kimberly Sloan. I'm a 34-year-old single mom with a spine made of steel and a mouth that gets me in trouble. But this? What happened to my daughter? This broke something in me I didn't know could break. Ellie is 9. She was born with spina bifida, which means she's been in a wheelchair since she was a toddler. But let me tell you something. She is not fragile. She's bright, witty, and can roast you so hard you'd question your entire life. She's got more courage than half the men I've dated, and believe me, that's saying something. We were visiting my parents last month in this shiny, soulless little suburb called Cedar Hills, about 2 hours from home. Picture the kind of place where neighbors compete over who has the widest driveway, where mailboxes have rules, and God help you if your garbage can's not back in by 4:01 p.m. It was just after lunch, sun shining, birds doing their thing, and Ellie spots this playground across the cul-de-sac. Her face lit up like it was Christmas morning. She goes, "They have an adaptive swing, Mom, a real one." I hadn't seen her smile like that in weeks. We roll up. The place is pristine, empty, not a soul around. Ellie bolts, wheels, toward the swing set, her curls bouncing, her laugh echoing. She grabs the handles, swings back, and I swear, for 5 glorious minutes, she was just a kid. Not a disabled kid, just Ellie. Happy, alive, free. And then came him. Mid-50s, tan, balding, probably listens to podcasts about hedge funds, wearing a red polo so tight I could see the outline of his misplaced superiority complex. He stormed across the playground like he was charging into battle, clipboard clenched like a damn bayonet. No hello. No, is she okay? No humanity. Just stood there in front of us like a mall cop with a power trip and snapped, "This is private property. You're trespassing." I stared at him, trying to figure out if this was a joke. "Excuse me?" He pointed, at Ellie, and repeated, robotic as hell, "She needs to leave. Now!" I stepped in front of her. "We're visiting my parents. She's just playing. There's no one else here." He didn't care. Didn't even blink. Just stared over my head like I wasn't worth engaging. Then came the kicker. "It's for residents only. No exceptions." "Are you serious?" I asked, almost laughing from the absurdity. "She's a child, a disabled child. She's not hurting anyone." He shrugged, lips curled like he was proud of himself. "Rules are rules." Oh, and when I asked his name, this smug, clipboard-wielding troll looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I don't have to tell you that, but I can call security." And he did. Security. 2 guys. One of them was probably fresh out of high school. They showed up like we were robbing the place, asking me if we lived there. I explained again, we were visiting family. My daughter wanted to use a swing. That's it. But they didn't care. Because this wasn't about logic. It was about power, control, gatekeeping. They told us to leave the property or they'd have to escort us off. Ellie, my daughter who had been laughing minutes ago, was now trembling, holding on to me like the world had turned cold and cruel all over again. Her voice was small when she asked, "Why don't they want me here?" And I didn't know what to say. I couldn't protect her in that moment. I couldn't fix it. All I could do was hold her as she cried into my chest and promise her the one thing I could. "We'll never come back here again, baby." But you know what? I lied, because I am coming back. Not with apologies, not with petitions. I'm coming back with a lawsuit so loud, it'll make that entire HOA wish they'd just let a little girl play on a damn swing. Ellie cried herself to sleep that night. Not the kind of crying you can fix with a storybook or a cup of cocoa. Not even the kind of crying that fades when they finally get tired. No. This was silent, body-shaking heartbreak. Her face buried in her pillow, her small fingers clutching the edge like she could hold herself together if she just squeezed tight enough. And I just sat there, frozen, watching my daughter fall apart, because a bunch of adults decided she wasn't worthy of being on a playground. Do you have any idea what it's like to watch your child, your smart, funny, fearless child, question her own existence in a space that was supposed to be for joy? She didn't say much, just whispered, over and over, "Why, Mom? What did I do wrong?" That night broke something in me I didn't know could still be broken. I've fought battles for her since she was born. Surgeries, insurance, school boards, ignorant teachers, inaccessible bathrooms. But this one felt different. This one wasn't just about a swing set. It was about shame. Someone planted shame in her chest that day, and it started to grow, and I couldn't pull it out. After she finally slipped into sleep, hiccuping from tears, fists still clenched, I left her room, walked out to the porch, and sat next to my dad. He was quiet, always is. A Vietnam vet, former police officer, the kind of man who speaks with his eyes more than his mouth. He handed me a glass of cheap bourbon without a word. The porch light buzzed overhead, moths swirling around it like lost souls. Everything felt distant, slow, like time had decided to give us space to hurt. After a long silence, he finally said, "You all right?" I shook my head. No, not even close. I told him everything. I told him how I froze when that HOA jerk called security, how I didn't yell, didn't fight, not because I didn't want to, but because I was so damn tired. I told him I felt like I failed her, that she looked to me to make it right, and all I could do was hold her as they took her off the damn playground like she was a trespasser, like she was a threat. He didn't interrupt, just listened. Then, slowly, he leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees like he did back in the day when he'd interrogate suspects. And in that same calm, steady voice, he said, "You know there's a law about this. ADA. Americans with Disabilities Act. What they did to Ellie? That's not just wrong. That's illegal." I blinked. "Illegal?" He nodded. "You can't just bar a disabled kid from a public use playground. Doesn't matter if it's inside some fancy HOA bubble. They don't get to rewrite federal law." I didn't say anything, because even though the anger sparked again for a moment, I was still buried under the weight of everything else. Exhaustion, guilt, helplessness. I wanted to believe him, wanted to feel powerful, but I just felt small. That feeling followed me into the next morning. I woke up to silence. No cartoons, no thudding wheels on hardwood, no giggles from Ellie's room. Just quiet. Too quiet. She was lying in bed, awake, staring at the ceiling. I sat down beside her and gently brushed her hair out of her face. "Hey, baby." She looked at me, those soft brown eyes, the same ones I'd seen light up 100 playgrounds, now dulled, tired. Then she asked me a question I'll never forget. "Why don't they want kids like me at playgrounds?" There was no anger in her voice, just confusion, just hurt. And I couldn't lie. Not to her, not after what she'd been through. So I took a breath and said, "Because they're scared of what they don't understand." She blinked. Let that sit for a moment. then turned her head toward me and said, in that quiet, matter-of-fact voice only a 9-year-old can pull off, "Then let's make them understand." That was it. Not a speech, not a breakdown, just a mission. From a kid who had every right to withdraw, to shut down, to give up, and instead offered clarity. I looked at her, cheeks still a little stained from tears, hands still clutching the blanket, and I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't rage, it wasn't justice, it was purpose. That little girl gave me her pain, and in doing so, she gave me a reason to turn it into something bigger than either of us. That's when the spark caught fire. When someone shatters your kid's spirit, you have two choices: crumble or rebuild with steel. That night, after Ellie cried herself to sleep, I sat at the kitchen table in my parents' house, staring at my laptop. My hands were trembling from everything I hadn't said, all the rage I'd swallowed, all the words I wanted to scream in that smug board member's face. But instead, I did something else. I wrote. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't polished. Just raw honesty. A post on Facebook, meant for my friends and family. A release valve for the pressure cooker in my chest. My daughter was kicked off a playground for being in a wheelchair. No, this isn't a metaphor. This happened. Yesterday, in real life. The HOA didn't care who she was, didn't ask how she felt. They saw a child with wheels and decided she didn't belong. I will never forget the look on her face as they escorted us out. I am not okay, but I will not be quiet. I hit post, slammed the laptop shut, and walked away. Did I think anything would come of it? No. But it did. That post caught fire. Not in the viral, flashy influencer way. No. This was slower, deeper, more personal. By the next morning, my inbox was glowing. Private messages, comments, texts from friends of friends. And then, the first message that made me sit up straight. This happened to my son too. Down syndrome. They told me he was too loud. I didn't fight it. I wish I had. Then another. They said my autistic daughter was making other kids uncomfortable. All she was doing was flapping her hands. We left. She still asks why she's not allowed to play there. And another. We live 2 blocks from that playground. I've stopped taking my son outside. Every time we go, someone glares or calls security. He's 7. 3 families. 3 different disabilities. 3 quiet, isolated, ashamed voices. Until now. Because I wasn't ashamed anymore. I wrote them back. Every single one. I told them they weren't imagining it. They weren't being too sensitive. I told them what happened to Ellie. And I asked, what if we didn't stay quiet this time? One of the moms sent back a crying emoji, then said, "Tell me what to do." That was it. That was the moment. The quiet revolution inside me turned into a mission. I spent the next 2 days glued to my laptop, reading, researching, building timelines. I went full-on mom detective. ADA, Fair Housing Act, Title II, Title III. I was bookmarking PDFs, downloading complaint forms, listening to legal podcasts in my car, in the shower, while Ellie slept. And then I found her. Michelle Rourke, civil rights lawyer, specializes in ADA and disability discrimination cases. Former DOJ, sharp as hell. And as fate would have it, the mother of a teenage son with cerebral palsy. I emailed her, told her everything. Attached photos, names, HOA letters, dates, footage from the playground, even screenshots of HOA bylaws I'd managed to dig up online. She called me the next morning. Didn't say hello, didn't ask, "Are you sure you want to do this?" She just said, "Let's tear them apart." I cried, right there on the phone, because for the first time, someone powerful wasn't just on my side. She understood, not as a lawyer, as a mother. She pulled together a team within a week, and we weren't just filing a civil suit, we were bringing in the state. Turns out, this HOA, they'd done it before, not just to Ellie, not just to those 3 families. We found 6 more in the next month. Some had left the neighborhood entirely. Some had tried to push back and been slapped with fines and threats. Others just gave up. Why? Because the exclusion wasn't accidental. It was baked into the rules. Buried in HOA documents were phrases like restricted access to non-residents and protecting community culture from outside interference. Doesn't sound bad until you realize that outside interference meant kids with disabilities, immigrants, neurodivergent children, people who didn't look right in their picture-perfect bubble. We got a copy of the HOA welcome packet from a former resident. Page 14 said, "Our community spaces are designed to serve our residents and preserve a peaceful atmosphere. Disruptions, whether behavioral, environmental, or social, will be addressed with strict adherence to our rules." Disruptions. That's what they called my daughter. We started collecting everything. Video footage, witness statements, board meeting transcripts, emails, security logs, social media screenshots. We weren't just filing a complaint, we were building a case, a big one. And this time, we weren't begging to be heard. We were making sure they had no choice but to listen. The HOA thought they could gatekeep joy, gatekeep laughter, gatekeep childhood. But they forgot one thing. They picked a fight with the wrong moms. The lawsuit went live on a Tuesday. We filed everything. Names, dates, testimonies, footage. Clean, clear, brutal. My inbox pinged nonstop for 48 hours. Media picked it up faster than we could respond. Local news ran the story first, but by the end of the week, we were on CNN, NPR, even a blurb in the Washington Post. Suddenly, I wasn't just that mom with the crying daughter at the playground. I was a symbol of the fight. The headline read, "Mother sues HOA after disabled daughter is escorted off playground. Civil rights lawsuit filed with state support." People started recognizing me in grocery stores. Strangers came up and said, "I saw your daughter on the news. You're doing the right thing." Some cried. Some told their own stories. Some just said, "Thank you." And Ellie? She was shining. She didn't even fully understand the scope of it, but she could feel it. She felt seen, heard, respected. Then we got the email from a senator's office. They asked if Ellie would be willing to speak, virtually, with their disability policy team. Just a short Zoom. Nothing public, no pressure. She said yes. I watched her rehearse the night before. She wrote a note card with 3 sentences. "I like playgrounds. I didn't do anything wrong. I want all kids to play together." And when the time came, she sat in front of the laptop in her little sunflower hoodie, gave the team a soft smile and said, "I just wanted to play. That's all. And they made me feel like I wasn't supposed to be there." There was a silence on that Zoom call I'll never forget. It wasn't awkward. It was reverent. They promised her they'd look into nationwide enforcement of public ADA spaces in HOA-controlled areas. It was more than we ever expected. But the storm on the HOA side? Oh, it was delicious. Emails leaked, internal group chats. Some of the residents, the quiet ones who'd nodded along to the rules for years, started waking up. People began showing up to board meetings with printed-out ADA regulations. A group of teenage boys chalked "Access for All" across the sidewalk in front of the clubhouse. One grandma stood at a microphone during public comment and said, "I'm ashamed to have lived here 30 years and never realized what we were doing." Then came the petition. Over 400 residents signed to dissolve the current HOA board entirely. Not just remove a policy, not just apologize. They wanted the whole corrupt foundation torn down. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Michelle and her legal team kept building the case, layer by layer. We had security logs that showed HOA guards patrolling playgrounds disproportionately when disabled or neurodivergent children were present. We had internal board emails with language like maintaining peace and behavioral order, which basically meant get the weird kids out. It was undeniable. What happened to Ellie wasn't a mistake. It was design. But here's the best part. The part that hit me hardest. 2 months after the lawsuit was filed, the city council made a quiet but powerful announcement. A new playground, fully accessible, public, unfenced, built right next to the HOA-controlled one where Ellie had been kicked out. They said it would stand as a symbol of inclusion, of justice, of change. And then they called me and asked, would Ellie be willing to cut the ribbon at the grand opening? I think I stopped breathing for a second. The night before the ceremony, I found her sitting by her window, staring out with her headphones on. I asked, "Are you nervous?" She smiled at me and said, "No, I'm excited. It's ours now." The next morning, she picked out a pink dress. I helped her braid her hair and wrap it with tiny fake sunflowers she'd picked out herself at the dollar store. She said they made her look like a boss. And she did. We rolled up to the new playground under a clear blue sky. Local press was there. So were dozens of families, kids of all kinds, wheelchairs, walkers, neurodivergent, shy, loud, curious, joyful, all gathered, waiting for her. Ellie rolled up to the front with a pair of giant ceremonial scissors in her lap. She looked around, at the swings, the ramps, the laughter already echoing, and her face lit up. She cut the ribbon. The crowd clapped, cheered. Some cried. I definitely did. She turned to me afterward, a grin stretching across her face, and asked, "Mom, we won, right?" And I swear to God I could barely speak through the lump in my throat. I nodded, pulled her into my arms. "Yeah, baby," I whispered. "We won." But even as I said it, I knew the truth. We didn't just win a case. We won a space that can't be taken back, a space that grew from her pain and turned into freedom for others. Now, every time I walk past that playground and see kids laughing, swinging, running, rolling, I remember that day Ellie was pushed off like she didn't belong. And I know it was the beginning, because Ellie isn't just playing anymore. She's building the world she deserves, for her, for others, for every kid who was ever told they were too different to belong. And maybe, just maybe, the next time some clipboard-wielding tyrant sizes up a child like mine, they'll hesitate. They'll remember her name. They'll remember her crown of sunflowers and that smile strong enough to melt stone. They'll remember, this world isn't just for the perfect. It's for everyone.